Okay, we've hit the go live button to make sure that everybody is able to get on and get started with us. So, good afternoon and welcome to today's ATI member exclusive education facilitated by GovMates. And we are going to dive into all of the good stuff about certifications and partnerships and, all of the things that you really are here to know about very shortly. But I am your event host. I am Meg O'Hara and I am the Director of Engagement, and I will be monitoring the Q&A and the chat and facilitating today's discussion. But for those of you who might not know anything about GovMates, we are a technology scouting platform connecting small and non-traditional businesses with system integrators and agencies who are seeking innovative solutions to their government challenges. We provide matchmaking, education such as this, resources, and more for ATI members and our ecosystem. And I'm going to provide you with a real quick list of participation reminders if this is the very first time that you are joining us. So first things first, go ahead and remove those distractions. We'll keep this to about an hour or so you can silence your phone. Great reason not to answer that email right now. Perfect opportunity to get some lunch if it's lunchtime for you. And try and stay out of your email if you can. We do encourage you to be active in the chat. You should see a chat box and a Q&A down at the bottom. If you give the chat box, if you want to give that a try, you can, but you should be able to communicate with anybody who's on here. Should you have a question, you can put it in either of those places. And then we will be taking audience questions throughout the discussion. So if something is relevant to the group at large, we'll be sure to touch on your question. If it's something that's a little bit more nuanced and needs a larger discussion, I'll be sure to connect you with Kristen after the event today. So that way, make sure that everybody gets what they need. Finally, yes, we will be recording today's session. And once that is processed and is put up, we will send you the replay link as well as the slides. And we will make sure to send all of those over. If you don't see something in your email by tomorrow afternoon and you'd like to see it, make sure you reach out to ati@govmates.com and we will get sure to get that over to you. Today, I am very excited to be joined by Kristen of Summit Strategy, who I know, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. And I know you're going to dive a little bit more into, a little bit about who you are and what you do and your expertise. So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to you as I'm planning to take copious amounts of notes. And for our audience, don't forget to put questions in there. As we, things come up, and if you have anything that is relevant that you need to ask us, happy to take a look at that either in the Q&A or the webinar chat. So Kristen, the floor is yours. And again, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. Welcome to today's session. So we're going to be talking about how to build a competitive edge. And specifically, we're going to talk about how to leverage certifications and partnerships to win, because let's face it, we are all in it to win it. So a little bit about me. My name is Kristen Maycumber. I am the founder and CEO of Summit Strategy. So we're a small business, small woman-owned business that provides marketing, business development, proposal writing, orals coaching, and training to government contractors all across the country. We're a fully remote company. We have team members and clients all over. We primarily support a lot of smalls. We also have some mediums and larges as our client base, but we're passionate about smalls. And I've been in the industry for 22, 23 years. I started the business almost 4 years ago. Prior to that, I led marketing and proposal teams for a variety of global engineering and construction firms. So I'm super excited to be here today and talk about this topic. All right, so what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about certifications first and some tips and tricks on how to better leverage those. Then we're going to talk about teaming and partnerships, and then we're going to talk about marketing and positioning, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. I will try to keep an eye on the chat here if you have questions throughout, but I will definitely get those answered at the end as well. All right, I always like to start to kind of with some context and kind of lay the groundwork for what I think that winners do well and what the firms that are winning over and over again, what they're consistently doing. So first and foremost is that they have a strategy. And I know that sounds like duh, everyone has a strategy, but I think the key here is that it's in a documented playbook or a documented business plan, whatever you want to call it. It's not a strategy that's living in the owner's head, and that people are kind of guessing at. It's something that is documented well. It's lived and breathed by everyone in the organization, and it's really your North Star that everyone is moving towards as an organization. So you're all working towards this bigger goal and this bigger picture North Star that you have as a company. Second is that winning firms have an established pursuit process, not just a proposal process. I talk about this a lot. I could talk about it for days. I think there's a strong difference between a pursuit process, which is really holistic. It's how you're pursuing clients and work. So it's everything that happens in terms of relationship building, in terms of business development, capture. Obviously, the proposal piece is part of that, all the way through execution of the project. Versus a proposal process is such a finite window of time where an RFP comes in the door, a proposal goes out the door. And so that's a narrow sliver of the larger picture. So winning firms have that larger picture down and they're looking at things holistically from a sales and marketing perspective, not just a proposal perspective. The third thing is that marketing and sales are aligned. I hear it all the time in GovCon, especially that marketing doesn't matter because the government doesn't buy through marketing. They're not going to buy through your website, which may or may not be true. I have opinions about that as well. We can talk about some of them at the end. But really making sure that your messaging that you're using on your website, in your CAPE statement, in your capability briefing, all of those kind of marketing tools are then aligned with your sales messaging that you're using in proposals. Because I think otherwise you're confusing your buyers, you're confusing your target clients, and you're not telling them the full story. The next one is probably a no-brainer, but I always have to hit on it because a lot of firms don't do this. But it's really important, as we know, to have relationships and to build them early. So we'll talk about that a little bit about how to get ahead of the RFP and just focus on, pre-positioning and building those relationships so that you can hopefully shape opportunities. And then lastly, I could talk about this for days as well, is that proposals tell a story. They're not just dry, technical, boring lab reports, because on the other end of that proposal is a human reading those proposals. And so the more you can tell stories and connect with them, the better. I don't mean fluff. So I'm not talking about adding a bunch of fluff into your proposals that doesn't really say anything. We'll talk about that throughout today as well. It's really about connecting what you do to the buyer and how you can help them. So, the other thing to kind of set the stage is, as we know, competition is getting fiercer than ever. There's a lot of firms that do what you do, especially when we look in the IT space for GovCon, the federal IT cyber tech solutions. There are a million firms out there that do what you do. We have a lot of clients in that space, and so it's getting harder and harder to differentiate yourself. So some of the tips and tricks we'll talk about today will hopefully help you differentiate in a sea of, a lot of firms that do what you do. And then I'm a former college athlete, so I always love a good sports quote. This one's from Vince Lombardi. It says, "Everyone has a will to win, but very few have the will to prepare to win." So some of the things that we're going to talk about today are really about that strategy, that preparation, all of the things that need to be in place before you have an opportunity to submit a proposal and win a contract. So we're going to talk about some of those best practices. All right, so let's talk about certifications first. My philosophy is that certifications will open doors, but they're not going to close deals. I think a lot of companies assume that having an 8A or a service disabled veteran owned small business or HUBZone cert automatically guarantee that you're going to get a set aside, that you're going to get a contract. But in reality, agencies are not handing out awards just because you check that box with that certification. You absolutely need a strategy. So that means that you have to know which agencies value your set aside and your certifications, how to position yourself competitively, and then who to build relationships with before that RFP drops. So the firms that are winning are going to be the ones that are able to combine your certifications with a strong capture plan, targeted BD efforts, and then a really clear value proposition, which we'll talk about as well. So, as we know, set asides play a critical role in federal contracting. They're there to ensure opportunities for small businesses across various categories. I pulled this data from a tool that we use called HireGov. I love HireGov. It's got a lot of great market intel and data that you can analyze. And so I know it's a little bit of an eye chart. You will get this, you will get these slides so you can zoom in and study it. Um, we always see fluctuations of these set asides based on budget cycles, policy shifts. Obviously, we're in a big policy shift right now. But key categories like 8A, woman owned small business, SDVOS, OSB, HUBZone, et cetera, they continue to grow and continue to receive those dedicated allocations. I know some of that is uncertain right now, given all the things happening with the executive orders and the new administration. But I would like to think that we will continue seeing this in the long run as things kind of settle down, shake out, and kind of get back to a normalcy. Um, so let's talk about certifications. Again, I think a lot of businesses think that these certifications are the golden ticket to winning contracts, but that's really only true if you know how to leverage them strategically. So again, the government is not going to just hand out contracts because you're an 8A or a HUBZone or woman owned. They want to know that you can do the work and that you can help them solve their problems. So let's talk about the benefits of certifications. I think everyone knows these, but just to kind of again set the stage. First is you are going to get access to set aside and sole source opportunities. So it limits the competition window. It takes it down from you're competing against everyone out there to a smaller pool of competitive mates, I guess you can call them. Uh, there's teaming and subcontracting advantages. So obviously that's a great benefit. And then the last thing is, as we've seen, I'll talk about this in a minute, but as we've seen the move towards contract consolidation, some of these really large GWACs across the industry and IDIQs and BPAs, having some of these certifications allow you to be more eligible for some of these larger contracts because they often have set asides for these different certification levels. So let's talk about where companies go wrong with certifications and then some of those course correcting actions to, again, focus on the strategy, less on just the certification alone. So, first up is getting a certification. So, you go through all that hard work to get the certification, but then you fail to market them successfully. So the reality check here is that, again, federal buyers don't care about your certification unless it solves a problem for them. So we need to position your certification as a competitive advantage to the federal agencies that you're pursuing. So when we think about how to do that tactically, we need to ask things like, does this certification align with specific agency goals? So for the agencies that you're targeting, do they have specific goals in place for those certifications that you can then help them meet? How can you frame the certification in your proposals as an efficiency or a risk reduction benefit? We're going to talk about this a lot today. Reducing risk right now for the government is a huge thing. They're analyzing every dollar that's getting spent, every contract, everything. So the more you can position yourself as reducing risk, the better. And then are you leveraging prime contractors, subcontracting goals to get pulled into those larger contracts? So are you also, I always say that BD needs to be a two-pronged approach. You've got to focus on targeting the federal agencies that you want to work for, and then targeting large businesses that you can be a subcontractor to. So another tip here is to use tools like FPDS or agency procurement forecasts, budgets, et cetera, to see who is awarding contracts under your certification and then target those buyers specifically. As we know in the federal government, we can't just, throw Jello at a wall and hope something sticks. We really have to have a strategy and focus on the agencies that buy what we sell and are a good fit for us. So the second thing that I see companies get wrong is just expecting agencies to find them instead of proactively building relationships and again, proactively marketing how your certification can help them. So the reality check here, most agencies already have preferred vendors. We know that. If you're not engaging early, you're just going to be another name in the system. Set aside contracts are often shaped long before they hit sam.gov. So that means you've got to be involved in pre-RFP discussions through RFIs, industry days, capability briefings, etc. So we want to move from passive to proactive engagement. So that means, again, if you're responding to a cold RFP, you're probably already behind, especially if you had an opportunity to influence it and potentially shift it to a set aside under your certification. So that's where you've got to be ahead of the RFP. You've got to build relationships with agency decision makers to help shape that scope and shape those requirements in favor of your strengths and potentially your certifications.
I am gonna jump in here while you're talking
Yeah.
because I absolutely adore this piece, and I have noticed that there are certain system integrators or primes that do have accelerator programs, and sometimes for a small business, in order to get in the door, help to shape some of those things or
Yep.
work as a preferred partner, getting into some of those accelerator programs is a great opportunity for that as well. Or as we know,
Yep.
being part of a consortia, which a lot of our audience members are, is another great way to, go to those industry days and stuff like that. So just kind of wanted to poke that in there as well.
Yep. Yeah, great perspective. Yeah, and it's really about just finding those channels where you can build those relationships, have those conversations. Again, it's a people business. It's even though it is the federal government, it's still people behind the faces, behind the contracts, behind the emails. So that's going to, take personal introductions, relationship building, and especially with those large system integrators that have to meet their goals, building relationships as well is even more important. All right, the third thing that I see often is just not using certifications strategically in proposals and teaming efforts. So the reality check here is again saying we're an 8A, woman owned small business, HUBZone, SDVOSB really means nothing unless it is tied to a value proposition. So in proposals, in teaming discussions and strategies, make sure that you're tying your certification to real advantages. How does that help them? What does that really mean? What are the benefits of that versus just, hey, we've got all these, acronym soup certifications after our name and tagged to our company. You really need to tie it to the value. So think about what those value propositions could be. And I've given you some examples here, but it really depends on your situation, your company. So is it speed and sole source? So as an 8A, we provide a faster, low risk procurement option who for agencies that need immediate execution and immediate contracts in place. Is it a specialized expertise? If you're a SDVOSB, do you offer mission driven solutions built by veterans for veterans? So think about how you can spin your solutions in a way that speaks to a need. And then what about lower prime risk? So teaming with us satisfies those subcontracting goals that you as a large system integrator might have and ensures compliance with your SBA contracts or your clauses in your contracts, your flow down clauses. Um, the other thing to think about if you are a joint venture, like as part of an 8A or part of a mentor protege, make sure that your joint venture has past performance. So the more you can do to work together to build up that past performance, the better. Because as we know, agencies might hesitate to award contracts to JVs with no history working together. So really focus on that as well. So, how do you make certifications work for you? One thing you can think about doing if you're not already is to track expiring contracts and incumbents. So, use tools like that fpds.gov or tools like GovWin or HireGov to identify when those contracts are set under your set aside will expire, and then start engaging with those agencies before they recompete the work or consider teaming with incumbents before they lose eligibility, like aging out of that 8A program. That can help you get some contracts as well. You can leverage your certification for subcontracting opportunities. So, again, find large primes that are struggling to meet those subcontracting goals. They may need you to stay compliant. So you can use tools again, agency forecast, et cetera, to track large prime awards before they need to really look for small business partners. So you can get ahead of that. And then certifications plus IDIQs equals a winning combo. Again, many set asides may mean nothing if you're not on an IDIQ or a GWAC with those small business set asides and small business reserves. So if your agency might heavily use Stars 3, Oasis 8, Stoop, or Polaris, things like that, where they have small business or 8A set asides, your certification alone is not going to get you in the game. You got to get on one of those IDIQ vehicles, or team with someone who is. So winners play the long game. This is true in many, many cases, but definitely in what we're talking about today. So again, proactively shape those contracts. Don't just wait for RFPs to hit on SAM.gov. Use certifications as leverage, not just as a crutch. So again, tie it to the value prop and what that brings as a benefit to the agencies or primes that you're targeting. And then build relationships. Don't just respond to bids. I think that's true for everything. We don't want to just rely on SAM.gov for cold RFPs. We want to get out there, build relationships as best we can. All right, so now let's talk about teaming and partnerships. My philosophy is that if you're only bidding solo, you might be leaving some money on the table. Teaming and JVs, those relationships also allow you to go after some of those bigger contracts. Again, we talked about the GWACs, IDIQs, and despite increasing scrutiny over JVs and CTAs, and subcontracting in general, this is going to be your best approach to weather the storm for short-term stability and long-term growth. So let's get into it and talk about it. So first we want to focus on finding the right partners. You want to really make sure that you're vetting partners, both for past performance, capabilities, agency relationships. Don't just team with a company because they have a certification. Again, you want to make sure that they're bringing real capabilities that complement your capabilities. Check their track record. You can look again in tools like HireGov, GovWin, FPDS, et cetera, to see their past performance. And then what relationships do they have with federal agencies that you don't have? Where can you leverage those relationships to help you get in front of decision makers? Use matchmaking events. I know govmates puts on a lot of great events. So use those, go to those, go to industry days, networking events. Most partnerships are going to be formed outside of SAM.gov again. So you got to get out there where the real connections are happening and be intentional. Don't just show up to an event without a plan. Research what companies and agencies are going to be there, who's exhibiting, who's sponsoring, who's speaking. Set specific goals on who you want to meet. And, as we know, in terms of the federal agencies, small business offices are a great starting point, but that's not the end. You really want to build those relationships with program decision makers. And then obviously on the prime side, the large system integrators, they'll have their small business rep at a lot of these conferences, and you'll have to fill out paperwork to get into their system and database. But then it's really about building relationships with those people that make the decisions on a contract by contract basis. And then again, prioritize partnerships that are going to create a win-win. So the best partnerships are really going to be built on complementary strengths. So if you're strong in technical execution but weak in past performance, team with a company that brings that past performance but needs your expertise. And again, like don't just chase the big names, the big sexy names. Chase strategic fits that work for you as a business. So I mentioned this earlier, contract consolidation becoming more and more a thing. And I think, with the current administration and how things are going, this might become an even bigger thing. So this really is about decreasing the number of standalone or unique contract opportunities and increasing the amount of contract spending that is flowing through some of these large GWACs and IDIQ contracts. And so mid-sized businesses, large businesses are likely to pursue more subcontracting opportunities as prime opportunities decline. So we really need to think about your strategy in terms of these GWACs and IDIQs, and figure out how, if you are a small business, how you can get a piece of the pie. So again, I pulled this data from HireGov. So this shows the vehicles with the highest spend in the last 3 years. Obviously, we know the GSA multiple award schedule is the biggest piece of that pie. A lot of agencies buy through that program. So really take a hard look at that and see if that fits into your strategy. Soup 5 was a big piece of that pie, and obviously Soup 6 just got competed. So we'll see how that shakes out. Others like Oasis, obviously Oasis Plus just went through protest hell and got awarded. And then Seaport Next Gen just kicked off. So again, just as part of your strategy, make sure you understand what agencies, your target agencies buy through some of these vehicles, and make sure that's part of your strategy and approach. And then on our website, so if you go to summitstrategywins.com/contracts, we are keeping a close eye on a lot of these GWACs and IDIQs. And so we've got write-ups and overviews and details on a lot of these. So if you are interested in taking a look, go check out that website. You don't need to subscribe or anything. You just peruse the free information that we share, and we're updating it regularly as more and more announcements are coming out. All right, so let's pivot just a little bit and start talking about marketing, positioning, how to get noticed before the RFP, some of those tactics and tips and tricks to help you level up your game so that you're not just relying on those RFPs on SAM.gov. So we already talked about this. Agencies are going to prefer vendors that they already know and trust. And so, having relationships, getting engaged before the RFP, before the solicitation hits the street is going to hopefully increase your win rates. I always like to talk about focusing on clients versus projects. And that's really shifting from a transactional mindset to a relationship based mindset. So, transactional business development is chasing projects. You focus on delivering a specific scope at the best price, and it's a short term win. Versus relationship based business development, on the other hand, is really about creating long-term partnerships with clients by understanding their challenges and providing solutions before they even know that they need them. So when we think about our strategy, we want to focus on what are our target clients, who is our perfect ideal client, versus okay, what RFP is out on the street for a project that we can maybe win and maybe execute. It's much more of a bigger strategy to think about it from a client perspective. And then having a zippered relationship strategy is also important. So, a zippered relationship strategy means that you've got relationships up and down the organization. So, if you think about a target client for you, whether it's on the commercial side, the federal side, state and local side, whatever, you want to make sure that like your executives are tied with their executives and have relationships. Your program folks are connected to their program folks. Your contract folks are connected to their contract folks. Like you've got relationships up and down the chain. And this is important because people shift roles, people get promoted. You want to have your junior folks having relationships with their junior folks. Because those folks are going to get promoted and move up the chain into decision makers at some point. And then right now, it's even more important because folks, as we see, are shifting agencies, shifting roles. A lot of folks' roles are being eliminated. So it's really important to have relationships throughout the organization, and you're not just reliant on one point of contact that you might have with your client. And as we're talking about clients, we really want to start thinking about how to position. Again, competition is fierce. So the best way to stand out is going to be solving problems for your clients. And that means that you have to really truly know what your target client wants and needs and what their pain points are, what they're trying to achieve, what their goals and objectives, what does success look like. And so as you're going through your strategy, be ready to ask your client if you get an opportunity. What's keeping you up at night? What are your goals for this project? What does success look like? What's your biggest challenge? If there's an incumbent, tell me about your current provider. You won't always get the chance to ask these questions, but having them ready to ask is really important so that you're not just, if you get an opportunity to talk to a potential client, you're not just asking self-serving questions like, when are you going to put an RFP out on the street? How can we help? You're really trying to extract really important information that you will then use to frame your solution in a way that solves these problems and pain points for your clients. So even more so right now, I think it's really important to get hyper clear on your value proposition. So we've seen it. We've all seen the news and the headlines. Agencies are scrutinizing every single dollar that they're spending right now, or that's been contracted out. And so if your messaging is still really generic or it's feature heavy, meaning it's all about you, now is really the time to spend some time and invest some time in refining it. Because you've got to be speaking directly to the problems your customers need solved right now versus just fluffy, all about us language. So why that's a problem is generic messaging makes it easy to ignore you. If everyone's kind of saying the same fluffy stuff, the government or the agencies or the target client, the buyer, is not really going to know how you differ and how you stand out and how you can really help them. Fluff-filled proposals and capabilities statements don't stand out regardless. And then if the reader is asking, so what, as they're reading your CAPE statement or your proposals, you've already lost. So we really want to be able to answer that so what question as they're reading your materials. So that means you've got to take time to tailor everything, but specifically if we're talking about pre-RFP, tailor your CAPE statements. Don't just talk about being effective, efficient, on time, on budget. That's table stakes. Everyone should be doing that. What else can you do? How do your services and solutions drive efficiency? Like how, not what. We want to really give direct results, tangible metrics, tangible results that we've achieved for other clients so that they can really understand what you bring to the table and how you can help them versus, again, just that fluffy high level messaging. So let's take a look at a couple examples of before and after. So let's think about the bloated value proposition versus again that clear case for impact. So the before says we provide cutting edge innovative IT solutions that optimize workflows, enhance security and drive operational efficiency for federal agencies. I don't even know what that says. It's so fluffy. It's so just blah. Everyone says these buzzwords. Like, what does it actually mean? So if you really shift that to a better benefit focused language, it's we help agencies reduce cybersecurity threats by 60% and cut IT downtime by 40%, ensuring that mission critical systems stay secure and operational. That hits home harder. If I'm a government agency reading that, I think, okay, I get what they can do and how they can help me. The before version is just too generic, it's fluffy. Any IT firm can say this sentence. Before versus the after version, which is really specific, it's quantifiable, and again, directly addresses agency concerns. Here's another example of generic capability statement text versus targeted positioning. So if before the before option, maybe if your CAPE statement says something like, we offer a full suite of program management, engineering, and technical support services to help government agencies meet their mission goals. Okay, great. Who cares? After we provide specialized engineering support for DoD programs, reducing cost overruns by 18% and accelerating project timelines by 3 to 6 months. So again, the before version is too broad. Every competitor can say this versus the after version targets a specific agency, quantifies your impact, and makes a compelling case. So hopefully you can see the difference in the befores and afters. And again, now is really the time to sit down and invest in your messaging. And I gave examples for CAPE statements, but really this applies to your website, to your capabilities briefings, to your proposal content, like everywhere that you're writing messaging about yourself. Really get focused, super specific details on your value proposition and those quantifiable impacts versus just these fluffy sentences that everyone can say. And then again, I hit on this in the beginning, but your marketing does matter as a government contractor, and being consistent matters even more. I went to a conference a couple months ago, and they did a panel on the discussion of AI and how the government was using it, how government contractors should, leverage AI, where the lines are, et cetera. And there was someone on the panel from DHS, and so Department of Homeland Security, and she talked about how DHS is using AI tools to basically scrape websites and evaluate whether your NAICS code, your past performance, your capabilities that are listed on your website align to what you're putting in sources sought, RFIs, proposal responses, orals coaching, or orals interviews. And that's a huge red flag for a lot of government contractors because Many of you have not updated your website in a long, long, long time because, again, the government doesn't typically buy from your website, like more in the commercial space. However, if there's AI tools that are scraping your website and aligning that with your messaging and proposals, you're going to miss out on some opportunities if those don't align. And if you haven't updated your website, like if you have a new certification or a new capability or past performance or anything like that, contract vehicle, if that's not on your website, you might risk losing out on an opportunity. So take some time. Now is the time to invest in messaging, updating your website, etc. So how do we do that? How do we tighten your messaging? I talked about it a lot. So what does that actually mean and how can we do it? First and foremost, cut the fluff. Say more with fewer words. I am not a big fan of fluffy sentences, buzzword bingo, as Meg just put in the chat. We really, again, focus on the hit them hard and hit them quick with the impact statements. Second is speak in results, not capabilities. So again, agencies don't care what you do, they care what you deliver and how you can help them. So again, the more we can quantify how you're helping and what the impact of that is, the better. Make it agency specific. So don't just have a broad CAPE statement that you're sending out to any and everyone. You want to take time to tailor it to that agency, speak directly to their needs, their goals, their objectives, their budgets, their concerns. If your message works for any agency, it's too broad. So the more you can get targeted, the better. Fourth is use numbers. So the more you can quantify your impact, such as cost savings, efficiency gains, risk reduction, don't just say you do those things. Those are empty claims. Actually back it up with proof points and metrics that prove that you've done it before. And then answer the why now question. Show why your work is essential. Again, as contracts are being canceled, paused, frozen, etc., it's so important to communicate your value and why your work is essential and why they need to keep you going. Otherwise, you might risk your contracts. So again, if your messaging is not working, take some time to fix it now. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about proposals because we've talked about kind of pre-RFP, and then I want to talk about proposals, and then we'll be ready for question and answers. So a winning proposal obviously makes your client's job easier. So again, they are human too. The people that are reading your proposals, we're not just submitting them to some, beige government building in DC. There are people in those buildings reading those proposals, and those people have thoughts, feelings, emotions, they're human. So we want to make the decision for them easy by writing clear, well-organized proposals, and show how you can solve their problems and how you're there to help make their lives easier. So when we write winning proposals, we need to follow the 4 Cs. So compliant, compelling, clear, and credible. Compliant is, I put duh. That's a given, right? We should always be compliant, but I cannot tell you how many times I have the conversation with people about, well, do we really need to follow their Section L requirements? Like they kind of ask for things in multiple places and we're having to repeat ourselves. Like, do we really have to do that? Can't we just, give it to them how we think it should be? No, that's a hard no, as we know. So we always have to follow their requirements, even if it doesn't make sense, even if we're repeating ourselves, it doesn't matter. We have to follow what they ask for. Compelling is again answering that so what question. You're also writing in a benefit rich language, which is more about how you're solving the client's problems, like what the benefits are for them choosing you, versus feature heavy, which is just all about you. Your proposal is your document. It is a company document from you, but it should not be about you. It should be all about the client, how you're going to help them, how you solve their problems, how you make their lives easier, versus again just that fluffy content that's just all about you and everything that you can do and how great you are. They don't care. It's how you can help them and how you can make their lives easier. We need to write in a clear manner. So many folks on the opposite end of that proposal, on the receiving end, are not going to have the technical knowledge that you do. So speaking at a very high level in technical jargon, you're going to lose them. They're not going to be able to clearly understand the value proposition that you're bringing, how you can help them. So we want to write at a seventh or eighth grade level. And that does not mean that you have to dumb down your content. It just means that you need to use shorter words, shorter sentences, don't use a lot of jargon, or explain the jargon that you're using. And just make sure that you're speaking at a level that non technical readers will understand. And then we always want to tailor our content. Again, any of that fluff that can be used for, like, you just send out boilerplate language to any and every client, that's not going to help you at this point. You have to write tailored language, speak directly to their pain points and the agency goals and objectives, and again, how you can help them. And then lastly is being credible. So we don't want to use those empty claims. Like, everyone says they're innovative, everyone says they're unique and best in class. And what do all those words really mean? So we really want to back those claims up by using proof points and metrics and success stories. We don't want to just claim we're innovative. We want to show the results of our innovation. We don't want to claim we're unique. We want to show the results of the work that we've done and the impact that we've made. So again, that goes back to tailoring our messaging, cutting the fluff, getting really specific and quantifiable as much as possible. So again, I said this, but I just feel like I need to say it again. Your proposal is not about you. It even is how many times in your proposal you're mentioning your name, your company's name versus the client name. So open up your last proposal just as a test and do a search for the number of times you mentioned that client name versus the number of times you mentioned your company name or we or our team, and just see how out of balance it is, because I would guess that you're very much talking from your perspective about yourselves. So again, that's a feature heavy proposal versus shifting that language to be more about the client, how you can help them, what the benefits are that they receive by choosing your team and your solution. All right, so key takeaways, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we want to use our certifications strategically, not passively. You can get certified, you can get all these certifications, and that's great. But if you don't have a strategy for how to use them, they're not going to help you. You want to build partnerships that expand your contract opportunities. So we talked about some of those contract consolidations, those GWACs, IDIQs, making sure that you're teamed up with the right folks that add value and complement you versus just, again, check a box. You want to position your business before the RFP drops as much as possible. And then we want to leverage capture planning, targeted marketing. And then most importantly, right now, it's so important, I can't say this enough, just focus on your messaging. Clean that up, tighten that up, so that again, you're focusing on your impact, how you can help versus just fluffy statements. Here's my contact information. You're more than welcome to reach out. That QR code goes straight to my calendar. So if you're interested in chatting about help with tightening your messaging, help with writing proposals, helping with your strategy, we do all of those things. Happy to jump in and help. Just scan that QR code. You get a meeting on my calendar. And then I love to connect with folks on LinkedIn. I publish content every day about this crazy world that we're living in right now, and just best practices on how to write stronger proposals, messaging, etc. And I would love to connect. So with that, I think we're ready for questions, Meg.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I have one, so many notes that I've written down. Two, I have some work that I need to do and going back to our proposals and seeing how many times we write our company name because I didn't
Yep.
think about that. But from that perspective, in your proposal language, in order to not talk so much about ourselves, do you suggest something like the customer, like putting in the customer's name, like X will, or is it
Yes.
more of a past customers experienced X? Because I feel like it's a fine line there. What do you recommend in that space?
It's a little bit of both. I mean,
Okay.
when I'm working on a proposal, I literally will look at it sentence by sentence and I'll think, is this sentence just, is it fluffy and is it all about us? Is there a way to pivot how we're writing it so that it is from the customer's perspective? And I like saying customer XYZ will receive XYZ by choosing our solution. And here's how it's benefited other similar clients. Like, statements like that, I think really hit hard. And then also, like, thinking about putting those key statements in call out boxes and graphics and captions, because as we know, readers are not reading every word in our proposal. As much as I hate to say that, I'm a proposal writer. I painstakingly, work on every single word in a proposal, but they're not going to read that. They're going to skim, they're going to flip. And so whatever catches their eye in those call out boxes, graphics, those are the key messages we want to hit them hard with.
Awesome. And from that perspective, I absolutely love the use of including metrics in your capability statements to provide that
Yeah.
tangible evidence. I think people sometimes shy away from that because they're like, I don't want to, when they come back and ask me like, how did I get those numbers? Like I have to show where I got those numbers. But when
Yep.
you are tracking that kind of stuff, you already have that, right? So it's
Exactly.
something that somebody already has and can write it down there. And if you've got like a really cool metric about something, that's a really great way to like a great place to use it because it
Yep.
does set you apart in that unique structure from other people who do what you do.
Yeah, I always suggest to, as a company, have a practice in place and a process in place to gather those metrics. Like even if it's a just an Excel spreadsheet where you kind of jot down some of those key metrics as you're executing projects, like have a quarterly review process for each of your contracts and projects where you're pausing for a moment with the team that's executing and saying, okay, over the last 3 to 4 months, what are some of the metrics and successes that we've had? And then just documenting those in an Excel spreadsheet. What you don't want is in the heat of an RFP deadline. Let's be honest. It's stressful already. You got 2 weeks to come up with like a big solution and strategy, 4 weeks at best. And then you're trying to scramble and figure out what are those proof points and metrics that we can find around here, like just scraping through the server, hoping you find something. But instead, if you've got that practice in place where you've got a database of those, a listing of those, it makes your life easier. So start now.
And it's something where I also appreciated that you were like, "Hey," you answered my question, of course, later in, the discussion about do we have a different one for each department, right? If I'm working in department
Yeah,
like DoD or DHS or wherever, like, do I have to have a different one? Yeah, because those metrics that you use for DoD are not going to align as well
correct.
with DHS as they will, with the Department of Energy or whatever it is.
Yep,
So, it's okay to have I feel like it's okay to have a couple of those, especially if you know what departments you're looking to work in. You
for
kind of
sure.
already know what they're looking for. So if you have something generic that you then take and change as you get into that, I think that would make a lot of sense versus just having one that sits there.
Yeah, the more targeted you can be in your messaging, in all of your marketing, in your CAPE statements, in your proposals, obviously, the better. Because again, as a reader, as a government official, whoever reading these materials, if I don't understand and see myself in that and can't connect to like how you're going to help me solve my problems that I got breathing down my neck right now and like all eyes on me, if I can't see myself and understand how you're going to help me, it's hard for me to connect and wanna give you work and pay you millions of dollars to solve my problems because I won't trust you. So the more we can do to tailor that stuff, the better.
Man, it helps to build that relationship that you were talking about
Yep,
earlier. Also,
exactly. Yep.
if anybody who's on the line does have other questions, you're welcome to jump in here and put them in the chat or throw them in the Q&A, because I know I have plenty of questions, but want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to share those. Um, how often do you recommend going in and updating that capability statement, right? I know I feel like there's a fine line there between like
Yep.
we could update it every time we do a project, or we go in every 4 to 6 months or whatever that is. Do you have a
Yep.
recommendation?
I think, I think it's more on a case by case live update, honestly. Like, I think having sort of one kind of template in place for each key market or each key agency that you're focused on is good. But I think each time you send it to a potential client, take a moment and review it and make sure that it's tailored. Because again, those readers are busy. They got a million things, they got a million Cape statements in their emails to look at. And if it's not speaking directly to them, you might lose out on an opportunity. So take 20 minutes to tighten it up and tailor it the best you can before you send it off. And then maybe have like a quarterly formal review for those like master templates to take a look at and update your past performance, those metrics as you kind of work through and get more work under your belt and have more of a story to tell. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Agreed. And yes, the event, the webinar will be on YouTube and we'll send the link out to everybody who registered. So if you are on the line at the moment, you will definitely get it delivered directly to your email and can forward that wherever. You don't need a password or anything like that. And, we'll put the PDF of the slides in there as well. So you can get a copy of those. But like I said, it'll be after it processes. So either later today or probably first thing tomorrow morning. So you can get a look at that. Another point that you had noted was like, hey, pay attention to the way that you're saying things in your marketing. Like, don't let it all be fluff. There was
Mhm.
an exercise that we did previously where we actually went into, our favorite AI bot, and we asked AI to write about us to
Uh-huh.
see if it aligned with what we were sharing and which parts we needed to beef up a little bit because it wasn't grabbing those. Now, it's not
Yeah.
going to be a foolproof thing, right?
Yep.
But it's kind of nice to get an idea of what's out there, what's being talked about you in your space, and
Yep.
kind of see what it spits back out at you. So that was a really fun project that we did where I was like, hey, a lot of this is close and some of it is very off.
Uh-huh. Yep, it could go one way or the other. I think, when we start talking about AI, there's so many, I mean, there's so many ways to use it. And I think a lot of people are trying to use it for everything. And I don't think it's meant for everything. I think there's ways to, like, I use it quite often for our own marketing and messaging, but I am always like, at one point, I think the robots are going to come and kill me in my sleep because I'm so bossy with them because I just don't accept, like, it writes all this vanilla stuff, and I'm like, "No, we need to hit on this, this, and this," and I'm, like, chatting back and forth with it to get it to where it needs to be so that it is targeted, tight, not fluffy, not vanilla, not typical AI, and I think a lot of people are just extracting it as is, dumping it in a document, and moving on with their life because they've saved themselves 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever, but there is a way to, massage it, and I think you can probably massage it a little nicer than I am with my robot, but I just don't have time to be super nice.
You already have an established mode
We've
of
established a
operation there, so you're
relationship.
good. Yeah. But I also think that it's a good place to start for if you've got that writer's block where you're
Yeah,
like, I have this big
for
looming thing
sure.
I have to create and now I don't know where to start. Like, just to have it write something for you and then fix it there.
Yes, for sure.
We do have another question that says, do you consider your capability statement your hook? And how do you provide CAPE statements for multiple agencies or IDIQs?
Yeah, and I think for websites specifically.
Mhm.
Yes, your CAPE statement is your way to open the door. I mean, that's how a lot of like contracting officers, et cetera, are vetting your capabilities to see if you align with what they need and then getting you introduced to other people within the agency. So absolutely, it's the hook. It's got to be that it's that first impression, right? So it's got to hit them off the bat right away, tell them exactly how you can help and what you're good at versus again this fluffy stuff that they're not really going to be able to weed through and understand how you can help and where they should help you. And then for websites, that's tough. If you're serving multiple agencies, I don't I think it would be messy if you had multiple cape statements on your website for each agency. So I think there's probably a way to have like a a standard company one that kind of hits on a little bit of everything. But I would say that that's not the version that you would send directly to an agency person if you were trying to target outreach to them. You would give them the targeted specific version. But for your website, it can be a little bit more generic, a little bit, but still not super fluffy.
Right. And I think making sure that you kind of identify the departments or the agencies that you're working with, or the
Yep.
ones that, you can put that on your website, right? Like you said, if things
Yes, for
are
sure.
scraping your space, like put the stuff in there that you want to have in
Right.
where you wanted to
Right.
grab from.
Right.
So we also had talked a little bit previously about the certifications and the partnerships and things
Mhm.
like that. Do I sprinkle like my 8A or my women-owned small business around my website and my marketing and my proposals like glitter, or do I need to be really direct where I put it? Like, do I throw it everywhere? I just want to make sure it lands appropriately, but I also don't want to like overdo it.
Yeah, I think on a website, I think having it in like a footer bar that's on every page, like having the graphic of the certification is great. I see that a lot, and I think that's a great way to do it. I think in the about page on your website, like it should be in your text or maybe in a sidebar, have a graphic with all the certifications so that they can see quickly. But we don't want to lead with it. I think that's where a lot of folks go wrong. And they just, their first sentence about the company is as an 8A HUBZone woman owned small business, we provide blah, blah, blah. No, it should be we provide XYZ. And oh, by the way, we're also 8A HUBZone woman owned and can accelerate your contract, whatever. And again, tie it to that value prop. Because otherwise I think you're leading with something that checks the box versus how you can really help them and the benefit you bring.
That's very fair. Um, Another question. Oh, somebody says, how do you suggest the zipper relationships evolve as the connections at networking events tend to be PMs or POs? How do we
Yeah,
get
I think it's
that? higher
I
tier.
think it's a living, breathing strategy that takes a long time. I mean, let's think about us as humans. Like, do we immediately trust someone that we meet off the street at an or at a networking event right away and we tell them all our deep dark secrets? No, it takes time. So you have to start, get your entry point somewhere, build relationships, build trust, and as that relationship grows, then your strategy can flourish to other relationships and other people. But it takes time. It's not an overnight thing. It's not, you can't just hit the easy button and have relationships up and down and all around. It does take a lot of time and strategy to do that.
I would completely agree, and I think sometimes, like you said, it's layered. And so you
Right.
may meet somebody at the networking event, but then you get on a phone call later and go, "Hey, I'm gonna pull in my so and so, would love to
Yep.
connect them with your so and so." And
Correct.
building that, I think, works until you get to that top tier where there is a relationship there. And so I think that
Right.
comes after the coffee date, right? You have your meet
Yes.
and greet, you have your coffee date, like lunch, right? That's a lunch thing where
Right.
we start to bring
Yep.
our leadership in there a little bit
Right.
easier.
Yep. Exactly.
And it's something that has been built on to a point that your leadership as well as theirs may be more invested in
Mhm.
spending that time because we know that we're all very busy with a limited amount of hours in each day.
Right. Yeah. And we're all working towards the same goal because we understand their goals. We know how we fit into that and can help them. And we're helping again solve their problems.
Right. And I think, especially from the matchmaking perspective, because as you have said, we do that.
Mhm.
I think if you are in with a big system integrator of some sort or a big prime and you have a relationship on one side of the house, those they go far and wide, right?
Yep.
So having the opportunity to have, a call or a lunch or a quick coffee or even a matchmaking meeting where yes, you might know somebody over here at Lidos, right? There are other
Mhm.
people at Linos who may be doing the different things who aren't all talking to each other because they're in different projects. So
Yep.
making sure that you take that opportunity to have that meeting and build that relationship a couple of times kind of gives you that permeation throughout the structure versus just being in a singular vertical.
Well, and I'm always of the mindset that your SMEs, the folks that are working at the project execution level and working day to day with your client, make sure that as a company, you're talking to those SMEs and teaching them about how to listen for pain points, how to listen for, opportunities for you to then pitch your services for other programs, projects, opportunities, et cetera. Not just heads down, we're doing the work. There's a bigger picture at play. And so that's an important strategy to have as a company and just make sure those SMEs know and understand their role in sales and business development. Because let's face it, executing well is going to lead to the next project. And so they've got to be they're the ears and eyes, often that front line.
Yeah.
So making sure they're bringing that stuff back to you as a company and you're brainstorming about that.
That opportunity to get in and spread.
Yep, exactly.
Because if they
Yep,
already
yep,
have the relationship with you, it's much easier to hit a yes
correct.
button on something
Yes.
that they feel less risky about.
Yep, exactly.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I know we're just
Of
at
course.
right almost at time. If anybody else has another question that comes up, or you were thinking of something where you were like, "Oh, I wish I really had asked that," make sure you just send me an email back after I email you with the update and the PDF and things like that. I will be happy to send that over and make sure that we get those questions answered. If you have something more nuanced, you're welcome to send that over as well. As Kristen said, her LinkedIn is on the screen, and you are also welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn as well as following GovMates. We've got a lot, going on, things that are happening over here. But Kristen, thank you so much
Of course.
for making sure for joining us today, and for everybody else who was able to join. Keep an eye on govmates.com/collaborate. All of our upcoming matchmaking, our networking, our education events are all coming up. Our next matchmaking is actually in the DC area. It's National Harbor on April 7th. We're doing sea airspace matchmaking, so it's a good place to kind of come in and try out your hook, your value prop, as you've redefined it, and give those legs and see how it works. And then, like I said, if you find that you had additional questions, let us know. We'll get you an answer as soon as we can. And we do hope that we get to see you in person or online for a future event. But again, thank you, and we will release you back to your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good rest of your week.